everyone. So a couple weeks ago, I updated you guys and told you about a few books that I was going to be reading in the next couple months. And I want to say that I have finished most of those books and that they were so good that I now want to talk about them with you. So I'm just going to get into these and show you what I read and give you some of my thoughts on them. So the first one is a fiction book. It's Dry by Neil Shusterman and Jared Shusterman. I don't know why that's hard for me to say this morning. This book, let me just first say, don't read it if you don't want anxiety, because that was the main feeling the whole time I was reading this book, is just almost like overwhelming anxiety. I finished this in like record time. I could not put it down. This book is, I guess you'd call it like a dystopian novel of sorts. It's about climate change induced drought that happens in the western United States. So literally thousands of people suddenly find themselves without water, and it follows the story of a couple of kids, teenagers basically, that are trying to navigate in what quickly becomes just a whole new world. I mean, in a matter of days, it kind of shows how society can so quickly fall apart. People are competing and looking for one of the most precious resources, and it kind of shows how quickly you can lose your humanity. I mean, whenever you're trying to survive, which is completely understandable and terrifying. And now I'm like, after reading this book, I'm like looking around at my neighbors and I'm like, how many of you guys would turn on me if there was only a little bit of water left and I had it? And what would I do? What would I do for water? I like books that make me question myself and what I would do in this scenario, and it's never pretty. I mean, I've got to be honest with you. Think for a moment what you would do in a world where you had to compete for water, especially if you have children. I don't like to think about it. This book made me think about it. And yeah, climate change stuff already gives me a lot of anxiety. So yeah, this is not a calming, relaxing read. Read it if you want to feel thrilled, anxious, a little scared, and question everything you know about yourself. So, needless to say, I loved it. I think this is my favorite book that I've read by this author so far. Moving on, all the rest of the books that I read are nonfiction. And I think I'm going to go ahead and talk about this one. And this is Under the Banner of Heaven, A Story of Violent Faith by John Krakauer. And I didn't realize up here it says author of Into the Wild and Into Thin Air. I haven't read either one of these books, but I know Into the Wild is a big title, and I think I watched the documentary about that. So I didn't realize that until I was already reading this book. I have not finished this book. However, I am more than 50% done, and I just want to go ahead and talk about it, give some of my thoughts on it, because I don't think anything, you know, like there's not going to be any huge revelations in the next 50% of the book, because this is a nonfiction true crime, which I like to read every once in a while. I am a little, you know, I like listening to podcasts and watching true crime shows every once in a while, and this one caught my eye because this is about Mormon fundamentalists who feel like they've been revealed to by God to kill their brothers, and they feel like they've been led to kill one of their other brothers' wife and baby daughter, which I thought just sounded awful, and it was. I just read the part last night where it described the killings, and I think I was almost ready to just put it away and say, I've learned enough. But for the sake of finishing it now that I'm like almost 70% done, I think, I'm just going to go ahead and finish it. A lot of this, I will say, is really dense, like Mormon history stuff that I don't mind learning about. I enjoy learning about the history of different religions, but it's like there's just so much information that I feel like I've learned enough at this point. Like I don't really feel like I need to know more unless I feel more interested in Mormonism. So those parts get a little boring and tedious to me because it keeps flipping back and forth between the history of Mormonism and how it split off between the fundamentalists and the non-fundamentalists. And yeah, it kind of delves into how these people's minds were messed with, and has like a, I mean, it's a very cult feel to it. Kind of shows how easily and how quickly things can change if you just slightly diverge. What a big difference it can make in someone's mind and the way you view the world. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think I'm gonna give this book 3 stars on Goodreads, just because some of it is so dense and boring, and I feel like it could be a lot shorter. That, and it's an awful story. I don't want to say I enjoyed, reading about this, because now that I'm into it, I'm actually like liking it less and less the more I'm reading it, just because of the crime itself. I feel a little grossed out, to be honest. Now, the next 2 books I enjoyed immensely. They're, I guess you could call them sort of controversial. I guess you could call them that, but that's okay. I'm not afraid to read controversial books. The first one that I read was Birth Strike: The Hidden Fight Over Women's Work, and this, she's holding a sign that says unpaid labor. I already talked about this quite a lot in my other video. Oh, good. I was like, I thought I had left a bookmark in and hadn't finished it, but these were just book discussion questions. This was a really interesting book, if not pretty dense. Some of it I kept having to go back and reread. Lots of like charts and things that I'm trying to like understand, but it basically talks about the expectation and the real need we have for women to have the next generation of people, but how they aren't supported in doing that. You are expected to do this really important and vital role for the economy and your country, but some countries expect you to do this, but they make it a really, really thankless and hard job, and basically say, do this, but you're on your own. We're not going to support you and help you and try to make this easier, and recognize the fact that you're making the country like stable, by providing more workers. That's basically what I guess every country needs and wants, is more workers. And this kind of tackles the issue of a falling birth rate, which I didn't know much about, but apparently a lot of developed countries are experiencing a falling birth rate that is not, women aren't having enough children to replace the population, that's dying off. People are having less and less children, and how that's an issue for some countries and how they're tackling it. And some countries are not tackling that issue very well. They are doing the exact opposite of supporting women and encouraging them in good ways to have children. Some countries kind of take a more devious route to making women have children by starting to take away their access to birth control, abortion, which I don't agree with. That's not how you encourage people to have kids. So that was really good. I enjoyed that. I feel like I learned a lot, and I did not absorb everything that was in it for sure, just because it was so dense. I would have to really study the subject more to fully understand it. Now, the last book that I read this month that I deeply enjoyed and want to talk about is Her Body, Our Laws: On the Front Lines of the Abortion War from El Salvador to Oklahoma by Michelle Oberman. And now that I'm like holding up this book, I just flipped through it. I highlighted a lot in this book, and I have so many thoughts on this that I actually think I'm not going to talk about this book in this video. I'm not. I'm going to have to sit down and do a whole nother video just for this book, because there is too much that I want to share, too much I want to discuss, and too much I want to unload on camera, because I have so many thoughts, and I really think more people need to read this book. I so enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and it also triggered a lot of empathy in me as well, and challenged some ideas that I had. So I really enjoyed it for that reason. I highly recommend it, but I'm actually not going to talk about it in this video, except to say that go ahead and read it. Who knows when I'm going to get the video up, but I just want to say go ahead and read it if you're at all intrigued, because I highly recommend it. I recommend all these books, with the exception of Under the Banner of Heaven. I mean, like, read it if it sounds interesting, but it's not, like, earth-shattering for me. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope what I said makes sense. I'm not always the most eloquent speaker, and I know I can kind of get all over the place, and I'm sorry for that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully I will see you all again soon with my next video about Her Body, Our Laws. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all again hopefully soon.